Thank you so much, Lindsay. It's perfect for my talk, actually. So how many of you like the new arrangements? So I take absolutely no credit, and as usual, it's Reverend Nicole that did the brunt of the work. So thank you, Reverend Nicole. And it's that time of the Christmas year, and what is it around this time that goes around saying, oh, oh, oh? Well, that would be Santa walking backwards. What better way to start a sermon than to tell a corny joke, open your hearts, and lower your expectations for the rest of your talk? And so Nicole basically, she gets input from me, but she basically tells me what the talk title is. And she wanted to be real clear. She says, now, Michael, it's your spiritual savings account. So that's practical advice that everyone that hears can go in and have something they can draw from to help them with their spiritual life. I said, oh, no problem whatsoever. So those of you who know me, what would I do? Would I get the latest up-and-coming thing that just got on the internet to scoop everyone? Or would I give you something that's decades or hundreds of years old, that's been misunderstood, that's extremely powerful? Which one do you think? The second one? Because it is, we call it new thought, but the best part of new thought is the ancient wisdom, isn't it? Yeah, and we don't reinvent anything. And so I'm not going to go back 100 or 200 years. I want to go back 2,000 years. And the background's deceiving because it's not about the teachings of Jesus. It is about that same time frame, about 100 years into the Common Era. But I want to give you some of the great and wonderful teachings from the Bhagavad Gita, the great Hindu text. And it's the only religious scripture that unfolds entirely on a battlefield. But why is that important for us? So our founder, Ernest Holmes, really loved what he got from the Hindu tradition. Remember, our founder, Ernest Holmes, told us that what his vision was that he compiled, and he took credit for being a synthesizer. He says, I didn't come up with anything new. I just synthesized the best that all the different faith traditions had to come with and tried to put it together. And his belief is if we did that, we'd be ahead of the game and we'd get the different truths and what I keep talking about. And this is golden thread of truth that weaves its way through all the different traditions. So Ernest Holmes said this about the Hindu tradition. And keep in mind, the Hindu tradition is not one scripture. It's 1,000 different traditions that came about from the great continent of India. And Ernest Holmes said this, and looking over the generations of the teachings of India, they believed in one God and only one. They believed in one power and presence in the universe. They believed what was restated later as the mind that sleeps in the mineral, waves in the grass, wakes to simple consciousness in the animal, to self-consciousness in the human, and to cosmic consciousness in the universal. So Ernest Holmes always told us we were as close in philosophy to the Hindu philosophy because they were the first ones to come up with this idea of this unitive consciousness that's beyond everything, real and unreal, seen and unseen, that consciousness really is the ground of all being. And we come from this tradition that we call New Thought, and a very strong predecessor to New Thought was the Transcendentalist movement. And there was a couple of men named Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau who luckily around 1800 when they were just coming onto the scene and being born and reading these stuff, all these transcripts were transcribed into English and they were available. And they were very, very meaningful to both of those men. And so Henry David Thoreau influenced lots of people. And there was a man that came on the scene by the name of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, Mahatma Gandhi, every day he read the Bhagavad Gita. He didn't go a day without reading the Bhagavad Gita. And he had this concept that he called clinging to the truth. And you'll see later when I talk about some of the teachings of the Gita, it makes perfect sense on where he got it from. Clinging to the truth rather than what was going on in the world around him. So he influenced a very powerful man in America called Martin Luther King. But when you think about these concepts, you can see how Dr. King could have the faith to march through whatever he needed to, not seeing the support around him, and do the great work that he did. So the Bhagavad Gita is a story. It's actually a poem, and it's actually, to put it in perspective, it's a small part of a huge poem called the Mahabharata, which is the poem about the allegorical story and metaphysical and metaphorical story of India and the traditions of India. And I won't go into the details. I'll do it. It would take me an hour to go into the great story. But the Mahabharata was one of the longest epic poems that's ever been written. It was written from 400 before the Common Era to 400 after the Common Era. The Gita was written about 100 in the Common Era. So there's a great story on how this battle came to be. But I won't go into that story because Nicole would kill me if we ended the service at 12:30. But anyway, there was two warring factions. And they weren't warring factions. They were brothers and uncles, and they were two parts of a family that all came together. And in the Hindu tradition, you saw that Ernest Holmes says they believed in one and only, one God only. The Hindu is not a polytheistic gods competing against each other. The Hindu tradition believes that the divine is so diverse, so beautiful, that one symbol cannot represent them all. So now we have this great, powerful general named Arjuna, who's a magical archer. He's a member of this caste system called the Kshatriyas. And the Kshatriyas are the ones that are warriors, not just to do war for anything, but to do war for absolutely the highest and greatest good of the civilization. And he has the added benefit of having a deity as his charioteer. Now, Krishna is the representative of that deity. And so the story unfolds very dramatically. How many of you go see a movie? Those movies where the climax is in the first 3 minutes? Remember that? I'm normally coming back from the popcorn stand at that time. But the movie is there, the drama is there. In this case, the tough love is there. And it's great, and I want to share that with you, but before I share it with you, I need to tell you what it's going to lead to. It's going to lead to some great wisdom teachings by Krishna to Arjuna. And the wisdom teachings is about what they view as yoga. And I'm using yoga in the term of yoke like an oxen, of being disciplined, keyword discipline, take one step in front of another. And when you have these yogas or disciplines, believe it or not, you have freedom. So that's not a concept that we're used to in America, because in America, we think we have to rebel to have freedom. And in this concept is the discipline gives us freedom, and I'll expand on that in a little bit. So, Arjuna is there before the war, and he wants to go survey the battlefield. So Krishna's charioteer takes him there, and Arjuna is this great warrior. He's focused on what he is to do. It's like when I was growing up, I played basketball 6 hours a day because I really wanted to be a great basketball player. I didn't know why I was playing it, but I was focused on it, and that's what I did. That's what Arjuna did. So now they're going in between the battle lines, and everyone's blowing their battle horns and slapping their spears against their shields, just getting psyched up, ready for battle. And this great warrior Arjuna, something strange happens to him. And this is how the Gita describes it. He says, Arjuna saw them standing there, fathers, grandfathers, teachers, brothers, sons, and friends. He surveyed his elders and companions in both armies, all his kinsmen assembled together. And then he starts to tremble. He says, Krishna, I see my kinsmen gathered here wanting a war. My mouth is parched, my body trembles, hair bristles on my flesh, the magic bow slips from my hands. My skin burns, I cannot stand still. My mind reels. I see omens of chaos, Krishna. I see no good in killing my kinsmen in battle. And so, in the Hindu tradition, there's something called duty. In the Hindu name for us, we all have something called Swadharma, which is our individual duty that changes throughout our life. And in the American tradition, most people that I've seen think of duty as someone else telling them what to do. But it's not the same, so it's important we don't take it out of context. So now Krishna is torn between his duty to family and his duty to the higher good, which is his role, and we got to take it out of context and think this is metaphorical, and get over the concept of killing another person is the right thing to do. Because whatever we need to do in this context, it's for the higher and greater good. So he's torn. It's just like we're all torn. We all have family members that early on are friends that we respected, and then they went the wrong way and we had to stand up to them. So he's not a coward afraid of the physical battle, but he's torn between which way he can go. And he goes on, and he tells Krishna this. He says, how can we ignore the wisdom of turning away from this evil? When we see the sin of family destruction, Krishna, when the family is ruined, the timeless laws of family duty perish. When duty is lost, chaos overwhelms the family. And you'd think if you would sing that to a God or spirit, they would have a little compassion for you and pat you on the back for turning to love instead of war and everything like that. Well, this is where the tough love comes in. Krishna doesn't respond like that. Krishna responds, why this cowardice, Arjuna? It is ignoble for a great Kshatriya such as yourself. But Krishna's not convinced. Arjuna's not convinced. He says, how can I fight when those that I fight against deserve my worship? You're fighting against your own family that you've known for years. It's better for me to beg for scraps of food than to eat meals smeared with the blood of elders I killed. And this is when Krishna, the father and mother figure, first they're hard on us, and then now it's time for them to give us some wisdom. And Krishna goes on to explain some things to him. He talks about immortality. He says, Arjuna, you grieve for those beyond grief, and you speak words of insight. But learned men don't grieve for the dead or for the living. Never have I not existed, nor you, nor those kings, and never in the future shall we cease to exist. And what he's trying to tell Arjuna is to look beyond the physical pain, to stop judging the world by what other people are telling us, by what it looks like in the moment, which is exactly what we teach here. When we teach treatment here, Ernest Holmes always tells us to look beyond the condition, get your insight from above, and look to the perfection of the universe, which you're part and parcel to. That's what you want to happen. So as hard as it is, Krishna is delivering this message to this great warrior, Arjuna. And he tells him about this, to stop looking at the local things. And what he's doing is he's telling him, and this message is not about Arjuna. This is, to the scholars have called this an eminent text, which means we should read it as if it's our own journey. And our own journey is that we all have issues where we've decided who we are, and we have a bad situation or a challenging situation, and we can make a choice for the higher good, or we can make a choice for the situation that's at hand. So Arjuna is this great warrior, but Krishna tries to give him some advice from on high. He says, Arjuna, contact with matter makes us feel heat and cold and pleasure and pain. Arjuna, you must learn to endure fleeting things. They come and they go. Because the world around us always changes. It's just like the Sermon on the Mount. We have to have a firm base to build our foundation on. And what's going on today is not what's going to be going on tomorrow. So he's trying to give him advice so he won't be buffeted by the current situation. He can go within, access that higher self that we always talk about here, and know the ethical thing to do, and go do it, and turn away from this situation. He goes on, indestructible as the present is, something pervades all of this. No one can destroy this unchanging realities. Our bodies are known to end, but our embodied self is enduring and indestructible and immeasurable. So he's talking about this concept of immortality and this greatness of the soul that we talk about each and every day. And then he gives him the 3 ways to understand this and to live his life. He gives him 3 yogas, and when I'm talking about yogas here, I'm talking about disciplines. And it's interesting because for me, I spent a good 2 hours working with Dr. Kathy Hearn trying to have one word that described my ministry. And that word was freedom. And Krishna is telling Arjuna that the path to freedom is not doing your own thing, it's through discipline. And the reason the path to freedom is through discipline is you're going within to your higher self, you're getting your guidance, and you're acting on that rather than in letting the world of effects buffet you around and that you go bounce from here to there. So this yoga that he's talking about is the path of freedom through discipline. And he talks about 3 yogas or disciplines. The first one is karma yoga, and that's the yoga of action. And we teach this every day. We say, treat and move your feet. But Krishna puts a couple caveats on that. He says this, be intent on action, but not on the fruits of action. In other words, the ends don't justify the means. He said, be intent on action and get that action from your higher self, your spiritual self, the self inside of you that knows the right and ethical thing to do. And he says, avoid attachments to the fruits and attachment to inaction. So he's taken away the possibility that Arjuna can just turn away. So when we don't like something, he's telling us our spirituality is an eminent spirituality. It's in our daily lives. And as we say here, we got to go treat and move our feet and act as if we just believed what we said in our treatment, that there's a good for all, and we're following our inner guidance. And as this is a powerful, powerful message to us. And we teach it here every day. He says, perform action from a disciplined and relinquishing attachment. Be impartial to failure and success. This equanimity is called discipline. So the discipline we're having is not something that someone told us would make us feel good. We're not doing something to be in our comfort zone. We're going within to our higher self and calling that forward, and that's what our action is based on. So that's the first yoga or discipline. The second is called jnana yoga or discipline. And that's the discipline of knowing what we're doing. That's the discipline of wisdom or the discipline of knowledge. And these disciplines are not separate silos, they interact together. And you would think it would interact together, because if you're doing action and not being guided by knowledge or wisdom, you'd probably be hit and miss a lot. And he's saying that actually the knowledge, the action is one thing, but the knowledge can actually dissolve the action into what it was meant to be. So the action helps you do things from what you think is the right thing, and the knowledge helps you reflect on it. And all this reflection is not from someone else told you to. It's reflection from on high, reflection from that beautiful spiritual and divine person that we are. And Krishna says this, just as the flaming fire reduces wood to ashes, Arjuna, so the fire of knowledge reduces all actions to ashes. A person of faith intent only on this knowledge, with his senses well restrained, will obtain it. He said his senses well restrained, because he's not judging on the here and now. He's judging on that intuition of what is right and what is divine. And he goes on and says, once he has obtained this, he will soon reach supreme peace. So this is the second yoga, or this second discipline. And once again, you see how it interacts with the first. And there's a third one called bhakti yoga, or the discipline of devotion. So this discipline of devotion is not the normal sense where you have an altar, you have an idol or deity, you say these magical words and everything like that. The discipline of devotion in this context is that discipline that you have where you're giving up of yourself, you're allowing your ego to dissolve, and stepping into that beautiful, wonderful, divine role that was yours to do in the divine consciousness, in the greater consciousness, in the greater way of being things. And for me, when I was looking at this part of it, it was Friday morning early, I walked into, this was in my mind, I walked into Starbucks. You know, early in the morning, Starbucks has a lot of people. And there was 15 or 20 people. And I was thinking about this. They all are beautiful, unique aspects of the divine. And somehow, some way, we have what is ours to do. And this concept of devotion is to stop thinking about solely ourselves, what's best for us. Stop thinking about these win-lose relationships and thinking about this divine place where we can allow our ego to take a back seat, where we can be of service to the greater consciousness. And when we talk about this, we talk about these things called kingdoms of consciousness. These are the higher levels. And when Michael Beckwith talks about it, he talks about the Esme kingdom of consciousness, where we give up our own ideas, our own identity, so to speak. And we're there to do the work of spirit. So what that does, that devotion, that discipline, allows us just to up-level our game past anything that we could think of on ourself. Because now we're an open channel. Because if we really believe in this oneness, the devotion aspect is the concept of us stepping into that oneness. Not just wondering, but stepping into it, as we say in the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, with a full body yes. There's no questions. There's nothing about that. And what Krishna is telling Arjuna, that's the path that we should be leading our life on. Having these yogas, working this karma yoga, not just saying how things should be doing, but actually doing them. But doing them without gain, without focusing on the result, doing them because it's the right thing to do. Then we use the yoga of knowledge to reflect on what we've done and maybe course correct a little bit. And then we realize we need to step out of our ego, and we use the yoga of devotion, of bhakti yoga, to ask the universe, what absolutely is my role right here and right now? And how can I be the greatest and highest good of humanity? So that's my gifts to you from the Gita. And my challenge for you is and incorporate these disciplines. Take the discipline of action and go do some action, but let go of the fruits. Reflect from a very high level on the actions you're doing and what it's doing for you, and is it working? And then take it to a higher level, to the bhakti yoga or bhakti discipline level, and ask Spirit, tell me what is mine to do. I'm here to be of service. And so that's my challenge to you, that's my gift to you, and I hope you go do it this week. God bless you.